That boy faced this same struggle every single day. Maru, just a plain butcher, spent his days chopping up pork. But this guy holds a legendary power that no one can ignore. His eyes burn red and he slices through everything in an instant, a terrifying change from the ordinary life he once led before waking up. He worked at a butcher shop where they sold mostly pork. One day, things took a turn when his boss got mad at the idea that Maru could be better than him, tried to scare Maru with his muscles and a sharp cleaver, and even asked if Maru thought he could replace him after only 5 years. But Maru didn't mind, because his boss always showed up just to tell jokes and show off his muscles. It turns out the manager was just showing off a piece of meat, feeling proud of his own skill. Right beside him, Chad Maru just nodded and kept on working. He slashed with sharp precision, his knife gliding smoothly with every cut. The boss wraps his arms around Maru from behind to praise his moves, but Maru tells him to get out of the way. The manager ignores the request, whirls around, and shouts out for Kim Yong. He called her again, but she looked like she was fast asleep right at her desk. Then he shouts her name so loud she jumps, while the accountant, Kim Yong, chews with her mouth full and asks what this fieldwork is. She waves them off with a promise to bring back something delicious. The boss grabs Maru once more and demands to know how much he truly cares. Maru realizes that this kind of care comes with a terrible price. Low pay, endless overtime, and no days off. The manager spoke with deep emotion, saying it was all because he loved him so much. He then asks if Maru remembers the test he gave him on his first day, to slaughter a pig. The manager remembers promising Maru a reward for taking down a pig, a job most folks would be too scared to tackle. Just thinking about killing one of those animals would be a massive wall in their way. Maru didn't hesitate for a second. He just followed the order without even blinking an eye. Right then, the manager had only one thought in his head. He dumps a bucket of water over his head and shouts that Maru was made to be a butcher. Maru grumbles about being pulled away from his break in the middle of his shift. And on top of that, he discovers the boss wants him to wash his back. The manager tells Maru to bring his old school fight strength to the job, but Maru won't work unless he gets paid. As Maru cleans his boss's back, the boss finally sees just how much he needs that cash. Maru gives a serious nod and says he needs a ton of cash. The boss then offers a job that might not fix his house, but could finally pull him out of the endless cycle of poverty. Maru says yes right away and asks what to do, but the manager checks to see if he really studied in Japan. The boss beamed with a wide, bright smile, declared it was enough, and told him to get ready for the trip. As a plane slices across the sky, it points the way to Japan. A short while later, Mara steps off the plane and waits at a quiet bus stop in the countryside of Japan. Standing all by himself at the bus stop, he suddenly understands that he's been left behind. His face goes blank with shock and can't believe what he's seeing. He realizes with a heavy heart that the plane is gone, leaving him all alone in Japan. 6 long months have gone by since that day. Maru went there because a Japanese business asked him to bring them some meat right away. He's worked non-stop with no breaks and now questions why he's putting in this effort in a foreign land. He felt wiped out, but something about the place felt totally wrong. Even though they say there aren't enough workers, he is the only butcher left, and a creepy man keeps watching him every second. Maru tries to tell the man he can't smoke there, but he only gets mocked instead. But what makes everything even stranger is the work itself. The company strictly wants just the perfectly separated ribs, throwing away every other piece of meat. He grabs a rib and feels it heavier than it should be, and when he squeezes it, he's sure something is hiding inside. His butcher notices a thin line and white powder seeping out of the crack. He finally realizes that no ordinary Japanese butcher would ever take this job, which is exactly why the Yakuza are keeping such a tight watch on him. He looks down at the rib in his hand, watching with suspicion as white powder oozes out of it. He decides to stick with the job for just a little while longer, thinking he's about to head home, but then right away he changes his mind and wonders if he should just walk out the door right now. The camera jumps to his boss in South Korea, who answers the phone looking completely surprised. Inside a phone booth, Maru screams that he can't take any more of the endless night shifts and the Yakuza watching him. The boss shouts back in disbelief, but Maru insists the danger isn't new. Something terrible is wrong with that place. The manager brings up his family's debt and how he begged for this chance. He pushes him, questioning if Maru really thought getting money was easy, but promises to fix everything within a month. Maru clenched his teeth and accepted the deadline because he had no choice, then slammed the phone down and punched the wall in frustration, cursing the money trap and hellhole he was stuck in. Back at work, he hammers his knife deep into the meat. He pours his frustration into the work, convincing himself he only needs to last 1 more month. Just then, a voice calls out to him in Japanese, and he turns around with a tired look on his face. A creepy Yakuza guard walks up with a scary grin and asks if things are going well. He gently touched Maru's face with the same hand he used to steady himself, and she knew right then that this was the end of him. The man keeps talking about wanting to hire him, and the pressure is driving Maru to his breaking point. But he spots a gun tucked in the man's waistband and forces himself to stay calm. Maru shifts the conversation, and the guard reveals he's headed out early with the rookie stepping in to take his spot. Just then, footsteps echo nearby as the guard shouts that the rookie has arrived. A huge tattooed man suddenly shows up, leaving Maru shocked to discover he is her exact age. The guard brings Marv in and tells the rookie to carry the ribs to the right spot. The rookie, clutching his bowl, asks where the special spot is. The boss gets fed up with the question, snaps that he needs to think for himself, and orders him to just toss them into any corner. Right then, the meat hooks dangling from the ceiling start swinging all by themselves. Mario looks up, confused and scared by the sudden shaking beneath his feet. Suddenly, the whole warehouse begins to shake like crazy. Suddenly, the ground shakes from a massive earthquake, and the boss screams at everyone not to let go of the heavy cargo. The rookie loses his footing and stumbles as the quake shakes him hard. The rookie screams as he drops the bowl, sending dozens of ribs flying across the warehouse floor. When they smash together, the bones break apart and fill the air with a thick cloud of white dust. Maru quickly hides his face and starts coughing as he realizes what he's breathing. The guard chuckles nervously and wonders if this is the first earthquake Maru has ever felt. He tries to brush it off as just bone dust and tells Maru to get back to work. Marva covers his nose and mouth while staring suspiciously at the rookie, who is being yelled at by the boss to clean up the mess. So Maru quietly backs away. The rookie asks the boss to remember that the butcher is from Korea. He thinks Maru has no idea what they're up against, and even more importantly, that she doesn't speak Japanese. Maru turns his back to them and speaks perfect Japanese, telling him to shut up. He glances back to make sure he caught every word of their talk. The guard stared at the rookie with pure anger. He only discovers too late that the Korean knows their language perfectly. The guard didn't even think twice. He shoved the gun right into Maru's face. He says sorry right before he strikes. With the gun pointed right at his head, Naru feels his heart break as he realizes his life is about to end right here. He looked back on all the hard work he did every day just to keep his family fed and safe. After all his hard work, he's about to die in a pointless way. His eyes wide with fear as he stares directly into the gun barrel. Right before the man could pull the trigger, Maru refused to let this be the end. The voice of his old boss pops back into his head, bringing that first day's test back to him. He remembers that while everyone else hesitated, Mari did the job without even flinching. While others trembled after killing an animal, Maru stayed cool and collected. With his eyes locked tight on the task, he asked how to bring the pig down in one swift strike. Right then, his boss started watching him with more and more curiosity. A dark grin spread across his face as he saw the truth. Maru was born to slaughter, whether it was pigs or people. Then back to reality, Maru flows through the moment in one smooth, effortless motion. With a cold, determined look, he finally accepts the truth. He is a butcher. The guard angrily curses his bad luck while gripping the stump where his hand used to be. Margaret realizes that even now, he has killed countless pigs, creatures that are 95% like us, and from that dark experience, his eyes focus with a terrifying certainty. He knows exactly where to make the perfect slice. He knows exactly where to strike with his blade. And most importantly, he knows exactly how to bring someone down. He gazes at his knife, realizing with a heavy heart that he has truly become a butcher. In his mind, he remembers having butchered countless pigs up to this very day. But now, the body is actually bleeding. He then pauses to wonder if the thing he just took down was really a pig or a person all along. Suddenly snapping back to reality, his eyes go wide with the sudden realization that it has to be a person. Right then, heavy footsteps rush toward him. Maru looks up, caught off guard by something appearing suddenly. A man, filled with rage, charges at him while shouting his name. He charges in with all his might to knock him over. The force of the hit knocks him backward, sending him crashing into the piles of dead pigs. He strikes him hard and shouts, demanding to know why he touched his brother. The man keeps talking, saying he was a good guy who was just about to pop the question to his girlfriend. Maru simply watches the blow coming, feeling the danger is right there. He knows he must strike a critical spot to escape, so he plunges the blade forward with every ounce of strength he has. Maru can't believe the attack didn't work like she thought it would. The man yells that he's a punk, hits him again, and shouts, "You think you've never been stabbed before?" He laughs off the pain, saying something like, "That doesn't hurt," which leaves Maru stunned by his strength, only for the man to suddenly fly at him in a rage to grab him once more. He lunges forward, clamping his hands around his throat and squeezing with all the power he has. His scream is so loud that Maru can't catch her breath. Maru's world goes dark as a familiar voice calls his name. Inside Hong Jan-ho's head, a voice tells him that pigs have tough bones and lots of thick fat. He tells him that a real butcher must memorize the perfect cutting path until he can see it instinctively on a body. Back in the present, Maru starts twisting the dagger still stuck deep in the man's body. He screams in pain and keeps twisting. The pain finally catches up to him, and the man jerks back just as Maru strikes. Inside Hong Juno's head, he hears his own voice whispering that no matter what people say, he was always meant to be a butcher. He stares blankly at the blood soaking his face, finally seeing the monster he really is. Standing before him, the two men have become nothing more than lifeless forms lying in the meat locker. He tries to pull one of them, grumbling to himself that this guy is heavier than a pig. Suddenly, a wave of nausea rushes over him, and he quickly covers his mouth to stop himself from throwing up. The smell and view finally get too much for him, so he runs and throws up on the floor. Breathing hard, he tries to make it seem like he only did what he had to do to defend himself. He looks at the scene and sees that going to the police would just make his story sound like an excuse. Then an even darker fear grips him as he wonders what the Yakuza might do next. He stares with a determined look and decides that the only way out is to burn it all down. Suddenly, an armed man appears on the platform above, screaming and pointing a gun at him. Maru freezes in shock and fear when she realizes there's another one there. The shooter starts firing in a rage because a plain worker beat his team. He sprints for his life while the man promises to hunt him down until there is no escape. Maru jumps into the freezing room while the shooter yells at him for running away and calls him a coward. The shooter sneered at him, laughing that he'd only run to end up with nowhere to go. Then he shouts at the coward to stop and fires a shot. Smoke curls from the gun barrel as he steps into the freezing room, looking around but seeing no one at first. He walks through the dead bodies, mocks Maru, and says he'll die fast if he gives up. Suddenly, he freezes and scans the silent shadows, his heart racing with suspicion. His boots are planted right next to one of the big hanging pig carcasses. He gives a sarcastic grin, turns around, and remarks that the situation is strange because he can't find him. Filled with anger, he began firing at a dead body, screaming that he couldn't find the guy anywhere. Suddenly, a wounded foot fell out of the meat, exposing the hiding place. Maru bursts out from inside, screaming and lunging forward with a cleaver held high. The shooter froze, staring in total shock as he couldn't even figure out what had just happened. Seeing his chance, he grabs the hanging pigs to steady himself and throws a mighty punch that knocks the man flying backward. The man shouts in anger and frustration, yelling, "You punk!" Myra lunges forward with the knife and screams for him to run away. Marva quickly plunges the knife deep into the ground. He grows angry at the mean words and screams at the man to stop talking. The shooter smirks and calls him a fool for not aiming at the neck. After crashing to the floor, he manages to swing his machine gun toward you. He points the weapon upward and screams for the pig to vanish forever. His finger hovers over the trigger, shaking with fear and too weak to pull, as he fights a desperate, frozen battle to move his hand. In his memory, Hong Juno explains the brachial plexus, the nerve network that links the spinal cord to a pig's front legs. He proves that hitting the exact same spot stops both people and animals in their tracks. Hong Juno warns him that he's starting to see things the same way, and soon he won't know which is which. Back in the present, Maru lifts the cleaver high over the man's head as he begs for a second to wait. Maru stares at the man on the ground with his eyes empty. Then he strikes the final blow. 6 hours later, the plane touches down gently in Korea. Maru hauls his travel bags up a long, winding staircase in his neighborhood. Suddenly, exhaustion crashes over him, forcing him to stop panting and stand still, completely drained. He decides he doesn't need to leave this neighborhood after all, grateful that he managed to catch his flight back without the Yakuza following him. To stay safe, he set the place on fire to wipe away all proof of what happened. He walks up to his house, thinking he has finally beaten everything. He steps down the final few stairs to reach the back door. He reached the door and found it odd that the lights were already on so early. He twists the doorknob and steps inside. He forces a smile, pushes the door open, and shouts that he's back with plenty of money and gifts. But the second he looks inside, his smile disappears. He stops dead in his tracks at the door, realizing the whole house has been turned upside down. Stunned, he couldn't believe what had just happened in this room. Spotting the open, empty drawers, he immediately thinks a thief is there and, in a panic, shouts out his mother's and Neru's names. As he walks through the room, he steps on something that snaps under his feet. He glances down at the floor, puzzled by the loud noise he just made. Crouching low, he spots the broken pieces of a big bone and can't help but wonder what it once belonged to. His face fills with horror until a calm voice suddenly greets him, saying they are so glad he is back. Maru lifts his head and spots a bunch of Yakuza guys standing right there in the room. He couldn't believe they had already tracked him down right here. An older, serious-looking man steps up and asks, "Are you Maru?" He then said he was looking for them all the same, and that Maru made the job much easier. Maru clutches the shattered bone like a deadly tool, knowing his enemies chased him all the way to Korea to kill him. Gripping the bone, he closes his fist tight and promises himself he will beat them all. Mara's face suddenly shifts, filling with total shock and wondering eyes. The man flashes his police badge and introduces himself as Detective Hayes Sick from the Narcotics Division. He gives a stern look, says the man's name, and politely asks him to come along. Maru stared at the man, bewildered by his endless repetition of the words Detective and Narcotics Division. He peered through the door, spotted the police outside, and quickly realized they weren't the Yakuza. He flashes back to the men he defeated in Japan and wonders if that's why he feels this way. The detective stopped his own thinking to say he'd explain everything later and asked for his help. Maru stares at the mess in his home and wonders if the police have the right to do this and what he might have done wrong. One officer quickly corrected the mistake, saying the real trouble started when his mom had a bad episode, not because of them. Detective Hanty Sick says the story keeps a serious mood. Then he tells Maru that his mom is using some really bad stuff, which leaves him totally shocked. A family photo in a frame shows Maru, his brother, his dad, and his smiling mom. He remembers how his mother, even after the family lost everything, acted like a child and kept spending money. But no matter what happened, he always loved the way she smiled. That joyful picture vanishes, replaced by the heartbreaking sight of his mother suffering. He looks on from afar as doctors struggle to hold her down in the hospital bed. The detective told us that by the time the police arrived, she was already gone. Sweat runs down Maru's face as he takes in the awful news. The detective then pulled out an evidence bag to show that this stuff was found right at the scene. He asks Maru if she knows when his mom started using drugs. Maru shakes his head, admitting he doesn't know, but the detective keeps pushing to see if he truly knows nothing at all. The detective's eyes narrow, suspicious of the dodging reply. He finally says he gets it, slides over his card, and tells him to give a ring if he remembers anything. Down the hospital corridor, the two officers walk away while Mario stays by his mother's bed. And later, inside a car in the underground garage, the air is thick with tension. Detective Han took a deep breath and lit a cigarette. Right next to him, his younger partner chokes on the thick smoke, coughing and crying. The partner begs him to open the window, but the detective snaps at him to hush so he can focus. He yells that the car smells like a gas chamber, but Han just asks why he has to step out in the cold to smoke. The detective stubs out his cigarette along with a cup full of ashes, repeating Maru's name over and over with a hard stare as he pieces together a crucial clue to the case. Back at the hospital, Maru sits by his unconscious mother's bed, confused that none of this makes any sense. He realizes that, with no information, the Yakuza couldn't have gotten ahead of him. Then he wonders who could hurt his mother, and right at that moment, the phone rings with manager Hong's name. Hong Juno answers the phone and asks with worry if he is okay after the fire in Japan. Maru insists he's okay, but he tries to hang up because he has work to do. Far away on the other end, Hong shouts insistently that he must know what's happening right now. Suddenly, he bluntly asks if Maru's mom was on drugs, leaving him completely stunned. Hong begins to laugh so hard he can't stop, and Maru, angry and confused, shouts at him to explain what he just said. The scene shows Hong Juno relaxing during his skin treatment and asking if Maru's bone marrow is holding up well. He keeps laughing at the thought that the Yakuza could have discovered where he lives. Maru stays quiet, wondering what he did to deserve such a fate. Hong gives a cynical smile and tells him he has done nothing wrong. Then he reminds him that he's an elite butcher with a special spot waiting just for him. Maru bursts into a fit of rage, screaming about the terrible things he has done to other families. Hong silences the shouts with a cold voice, calls his name, and makes him stop. He then decided to visit his sister at her company because she was missing him so much. He tells him that his mother needs rehab and he needs money to survive. Leaving the hospital, Maru learns he can make a lot of money by taking on dangerous cuts. Even while he clenched his jaw in anger, Hong invited him to grab a nobody and head out together. He cheerfully says their goodbyes and promises to talk again before hanging up, leaving him to stare at his unconscious mom on the hospital bed. His hand clutches the phone so hard he can feel the heavy decision waiting for him. With his face swallowed by the dark, he accepts his fate since he has no other way out. The scene shifts to a delivery truck. One guy yells at his coworker for just standing there, telling him this kind of work is all he's good for, right when a heavy bag slips from the back of the truck and smashes onto the ground. His coworker spots him standing there and shouts for him to grab the pig that has fallen. Feeling annoyed, the man grabs it and yells at him. He tosses it up in the air, questioning if this is how he treats the meat and threatening to tell the manager at home. The man grumbled under his breath, yet he lifted the heavy bag onto his shoulders anyway. As he climbs out of the truck, he mutters and curses under his breath in frustration. Supervisor Baxo grumbled about the sweltering heat and the mountain of packages waiting to be loaded. After you're done, Troy Dool tells you to go get the rookie. Beck gets mad and claims Troy treated him badly, but Troy just reminds him he lost the rock-paper-scissors game and then smirks, daring the rookie to be afraid of him. A vein on Beck's forehead throbs with rage when someone calls him a pig. He snatches up the meat tenderizer and furiously demands to know who dares call him a pig. Troy didn't even flinch as he reached for his bowing knife. The two weapons collide as they stand face to face. The air between them crackles so hard it turns into a red dragon and a white tiger staring each other down. Troy mocks him, daring to ask if he's finally lost his temper after being called a pig for so long. They lock eyes with pure hate, ready to jump back into the fight at any second. Troy quickly tucks his knife away and calls him adorable. He says he's giving up the truck so she can have it, knowing he'll definitely cause an accident. Later that night, the delivery truck sits parked right in front of the building. Inside the truck, Bake is fast asleep. Just then, a bubble burst and pulled him back from his daydream. A cat pops its head through the truck window, and Bake wonders if it's there to keep an eye on things for Supervisor Choi. He picks up the cat to play with it and wonders if it only came because it smelled the meat. Then he grumbles, wondering why Choi is taking so long. He stomped down the stairs, still grumbling that Choi likely went out to dinner with the rookie without him. He spotted a jar left open on the building door, guessing they must have had so much fun they forgot to shut it. He steps inside, calling for Choi while clutching the cat. His eyes go wide with shock at the terrible scene he finds inside. The hallway is a wreck, littered with bottles and sharp glass shards all over the floor. He walks up to the body and curses Choi for leading the rookie right here. He asks the rookie where the supervisor is, warning him about the manager named Hong. Puzzled by the silence, he presses closer to get a better look. He spots Troy peering closer and shouts his name once more. Desperate, he runs a hand through his hair, unable to believe that idiot let this happen. He tightens his grip on the mallet, wondering how a rookie could dare point a knife at his leaders. He flashes a crazy grin and warns the new guy that if he acts this way, he'll be on the floor soon. Suddenly, S steps in right then to stop him from bullying. Bak stands before Maru, who challenges the idea of being superior with a bold and defiant voice. He looks at Kui with cold eyes and asks if Bak is from World Livestock too. Bak grins with a sneer, thinking he knows everything. Clutching a sledgehammer over his shoulder, he mocks Maru by saying kids today don't respect their elders, then suddenly lunges at Buck with a knife while grinning wildly, and right after that, Beck cracks a joke asking if anyone knows what you call a strong cow. He answers it himself, saying, sausage. He swung his sledgehammer hard to block Maru's attack. The force was so strong it snapped Maru's knife in half, leaving him staring in shock at the broken handle, while Bank lifts his sledgehammer high, screaming for the rookie to finally stand up to him. Far away, a table is piled high with a party cake and some fancy presents. In the fancy room, the suited men scrub up the mess while one mutters that he can't believe they sent Chief Bank to bring in the newcomer. Another man nods in worry, fearing that mixing the two is a bad idea, especially with how grumpy Chief Choi is. Then, a third man, all jittery and shouting, claimed Director Hong promised that this rookie was the very best there was. The argument gets hotter as one of them growls and asks if they have a problem with Chiefs Choi and Beck. The fight turns physical and funny as the men bicker over who is tougher and if Beck's jokes are holy or just plain strange. The man insists that, unlike everyone else, he has truly seen Chief Bake fight. In a flashback, Chief Bake grabs a man by the throat and tells his joke about a cow on fire. He says the man will live if he can get the answer right. That was the exact moment he became a legend. Once, he crushed all the bullies and gangsters in the area and became the king of the region. He was already powerful with just his bare hands, but something else made him truly complete. It was the hammer that Director Hong gave him himself. That was the exact second the strongest man ever met a weapon too powerful to defeat. That's why he's known as the Unstoppable Bull, smashing forward with a crushing blow while mocking Maru for beating Chief Choi with such weak skills. And though Maru is struggling under the hammer's weight, he admits that Choi is indeed weaker than him. His eyes suddenly go wide with shock. Bake grins wildly and lifts his hammer to crush him once and for all. He barely slips out of the way just in time and the hit goes wide. With the hammer stuck in the ground, he stepped closer and told another joke about a cow that could paint. Then he shouts the answer, Picasso! As he charges again. But Beck, annoyed that no one is laughing, swings a punch that Maru blocks with his arm. The impact sends him crashing into the wall, and Beck grumbles that his boss can't even make him laugh to ease the tension. Margot soon sees that their fighting only makes her enemy faster, while Beck grows furious at her refusal to stop and start laughing at his heavy hammer. As he attacks without stopping, he tells a bunch of funny cow jokes, like one hatching from an egg and another driving a car. The punches and jokes keep coming as Beck attacks with terrifying, unpredictable force. He ends his joke by slamming the floor and shouting the answer. A huge, crazy grin stretches across his face as he looks at the mess he made. Maru grabs the chance and shoots forward with the broken knife handle, striking a weak spot that appeared right before her. Suddenly, his eyes go wide as he spots the perfect chance. The crazy guy truly caught the sharp blade with just his teeth. He tells another silly joke about a cow that managed to bite a knife. He spits out the answer, his eyes wide with the sheer madness of the moment. Maru tries to finish him off, but Beck complains that Troy laughed at that one. With a wild grin, he taunts Maru, claiming his scratches are weaker than a mosquito bite. He lifts the sledgehammer high above his head, ready to teach him what a real blow feels like. Then he whirls around, unleashing a wild storm of attacks. His hand grips the weapon's handle so hard it feels like he's trying to crush it. With a mighty crash, he swings the sledgehammer for the final blow, but Maru barely has time to roll out of the way just in time to get out of harm's way. Lying on the floor, Maru realizes with frustration that the man is moving so fast now that she can barely keep up and can't dodge anymore. Bag snaps and knees him in the face, then grabs Maru's foot to tell a joke about a cow flying in the sky. Once more, he starts with a silly joke, then yanks his opponent violently against the wall, leaving Maru stumbling back while spitting out the shock of the hit. Before he can get back on his feet, Beck is suddenly in the air, diving down to strike him again. He looks at him, still waiting for a laugh, and asks what you call a laughing cow. Suddenly, his face goes pale with shock when he spots something dripping. Beck stood up, wounded, and realized the rookie had only been aiming for his vital spots. He finally gets why Director Hong calls him the absolute best of the best. Still on his feet, he gazes down at Maru on the ground and lets out that he wants to ask him a question. Maru glares with a stubborn look, asking if anyone ever laughs at his really bad jokes. Beck's face twisted into a blind, absolute rage. He grips the sledgehammer tighter, admitting he considered holding back since the newcomer is new. Now he screams in rage, furious that Maru dared to insult his jokes. While we watch, someone over there is hammering a nail. Hong Joon-ho looks at his artwork with a happy smile, totally pleased with his own work. He then gazes at a picture of Maru in a heart-shaped frame, marveling at how great he looks in the photo. He stops the fight between his workers, and they instantly salute him. Hong thinks that out of all the people, Chief Beck would be the perfect match for Maru. Even though the rookie is talented, his men agree that Chief Beck is still the best. Hong's smile fades away and his face turns dark and serious. With a dangerous voice, he demanded to know why they dared call our Maru by such a casual name. The men stand frozen, staring at their boss with wide eyes as his sudden scolding leaves them baffled. Hong tells them to call Maru manager. But one person objects, pointing out that the newcomer is only 23. With a grin, he reminds them why they named Chief Beck the Unstoppable Bull. Back in the fight, he reminds everyone that a bull is still just a beast. The heavy sledgehammer finally slips out of his tired hand. He drops to his knees, beaten, while Maru stands above him. Beck gazed up, drained and stunned by his own loss, wondering how any creature could ever hope to defeat a true butcher. He finally sees that Maru wasn't just hacking at things blindly, but following a clever plan all along. He realized that Maru had used a special trick to make every cut explode open the instant he pushed with all his might. He realizes with a sinking heart that he was actually messing with the rookie. He realized that all along, he was just dancing in the palm of Maru's hand. Beck sneers at the broken knife in his hand, calls him a rookie, and Maru raises a sledgehammer to ask what people call an animal that can fall, only for the moment to explode into a shower of confetti and celebration. Before him, a crowd of men cheered him on and welcomed him as manager Maru. They cheer loudly, vowing to pour their very souls into serving him. Marvu says not a word, just tossing something toward them. The crowd cheers as the badges fly, thinking it's a gift, but their joy quickly turns to horror. He shows that the badges belong to two other pigs he has already taken down. He gives them a defiant look and says, "You can pick these up if you dare." In response, every man pulls out his weapon and gets ready to strike. Mar turns his back to them and heads up the elevator, ignoring the danger. He whips around with a furious look in his eyes, yelling that they are nothing but pigs and demanding to know why they won't stand up and fight. Perched on his throne, Hong Juno watches his warriors ready for battle and talks about this Maru fellow. He realizes that Maru has grown far stronger than anyone thought possible. Maru stands right in the middle of the chaos, blocking attacks from all sides at once. He grabs a heavy mallet and brings it down hard on one of the men. Maru stares at his enemies with pure rage, while Hong Jan-ho watches the screaming henchmen rush toward him. He lunges forward, slashing and spinning his blade to cut down every man near him, only for Hong Juno to realize that this isn't enough. He pushes himself up, leaning forward with his hands on his knees. He squeezes his fist tight and whispers Maru's name. Instead of fighting, he grabs 2 glow sticks and waves them around wildly. Jan-ho shouts at Maru to keep going and finish them all, leaving his subordinates completely confused. The scene shifts to show dozens of pigs wandering through a field. Even though they are quiet creatures, they will sometimes strike back at people. For a butcher, the very first thing to do is knock the pigs out. Margot lifts the meat tenderizer high and strikes one of the men with a single heavy blow. One of the henchmen screams in anger, wondering how he dares to swing Chief Beck's mallet, then charges ahead yelling for them to chop everything up as an offering on Beck's altar. Before you cut into the pig, you must drain all the blood first, which is the very next step to take. Maru lifts his knife, now fully aware of the danger. He then shoved it right into the chest of the henchman who had just screamed. Holding the limp man, his friends rush forward to strike him from behind. Maru grabs the man and throws him in front of his own friends to get hit for him. The other men freeze in shock, shouting that Maru is a traitor for taking the chief hostage. One of them dashes toward Maru, screaming that he's going to save Chief. Now it's time for the big first step in taking things apart. By that name, it means nothing more than taking the skin off. With eyes wide with madness, Maru grabs his knife, lunges forward to slash at anyone who stands in his way, while Hong Juno steps back to finish the rest of the climb later. The men are lying on the ground, beaten and defeated, while Maru pants hard to catch his breath for a moment. Then he stands up among the fallen, gripping the mallet in one hand and the knife in the other. The survivors stare at him in terror, screaming that he is a monster and wondering how they could ever defeat a boss like him. Just as he steps forward, one of them screams desperately for him to stop. Just then, Juno's voice cuts through the air, and Maru spins around in shock. Then, he lunges at her before he can even think. Juno's voice keeps going, warning that even he will one day be lost, and then he asks Maru if he knows what he is about to kill. He flashed a terrifying grin and smashed the object in his hand until it burst into 1,000,000 pieces. Suddenly, the scene shifts to Hong Juno holding a birthday cake and asking what you think of the people he just killed. He then smashes the cake hard into Maru's face, screaming and asking if they look like pigs. Jan-ho says he always knew Maru would grow up to be a butcher just like him. Hong Juno tells the other man to stop playing with the pigs and invites him inside. Maru lifts his head and asks where his sister is. They lock eyes for a second before someone steps on the broken cake pieces lying on the floor. Jan-ho sees Kim yawning, and as Maru turns to her with teary eyes, she wonders how anyone could be so mean. With frosting on her finger and tears still streaming down her face, Kim Young glares at the group and demands to know who is responsible. Her face twisted in rage as she screamed again, shouting out who had done this. Lying on the floor, one of the hurt men sees her and tries to talk. Just as he's about to speak, someone stops him by pressing a foot on the man's body, pointing sharply at Maru. Right away, the other 2 surviving henchmen spin around and point just like him. Maru is so confused by the accusation that he can only say, "Me." Suddenly, a gunshot rings out, and the bullet flies so close it misses his head by just a few inches. Kim Young yells "scumbag" at Maru while aiming a gun at him, so he dives to the floor to escape the shot, leaving her shocked that he is carrying a weapon. Since he's already fought an armed opponent, he knows he must get closer to win. He crouches low, ready to spring into action, knowing that even if it's dangerous, it's the only way he can win. To his shock, it's actually her who rushes at him with a strike. Maru is stunned that she was the one who moved so close. Though shocked, he moves fast enough to push the gun away. The gun goes off into the sky as they fight, and now he can finally grab her. With a determined look, he chooses to end the fight with one powerful strike, but she sees it coming and readies a kick to stop him. The hit lands right on his chin, jerking his head back from the force. He growls in pain as the sudden kick hits him hard. Before he can even catch his breath, she launches into a flurry of punches and knocks him down. He spits in disbelief, wondering how this girl can fight so hard even when they are right up close. She keeps screaming about revenge for her cake while he tries to defend himself but can't find a way to break free. Hong Jan-ho screams a warning to Maru about Kim Yong, the top agent, only for her to instantly knock him down with a sharp strike. She then finishes her thought about his North Korean training while pinning him and pressing a gun to his head, all while a flashback shows dozens of bodies strewn across the floor and tables. Kim Young was downing noodles and meat. She sits all by herself at a table, eating fast while everything around her goes crazy. A figure crept slowly closer to the girl. A big man with an axe on his shoulder steps up and asks what animal took the pig he was chasing. He lifts his sunglasses, ready to look the person responsible right in the eye. His eyes went wide with surprise as he looked at the scene. He finally sees that the little girl isn't a pig, but a real human child. Even with food still in her mouth, she asks who he is and if he's a Southern soldier. The man gives a creepy smile and says she's a person, but just a beggar. He sets the soda bottle on his axe and tells her to take her time while she eats. The girl snatches up her drink and keeps digging in, which makes the man remark on how hungry she is. He tells her she could earn lots of cash doing something called mukbang, and she asks him what that even means. He realizes she doesn't know, so he plays a video on his phone showing a girl eating. He says that eating that way is just how he makes money. The girl is stunned by the thought of getting paid just for eating that much. Her eyes were shining with disbelief as the man offered her a job with plenty of food, but she stood up instantly, declaring that her revolutionary spirit would never be bought by American capitalist ideals. But when he offers endless food and snacks, she instantly pledges her loyalty and calls him master. After she clears away the rest of the food to tidy up the mess, he asks her to bring back some ice cream. A week later, Hong Jan-ho reads about a strange explosion in the newspaper and looks curious about it. Suddenly, Kim Young bursts in wearing ragged, filthy clothes and demands to know if she was behind what's in the paper. He shifts the conversation and asks if one of the popsicles she's eating belongs to him. With food still in her mouth, she acts like she doesn't hear him before being officially introduced. The scene shifts back to the fight, with Kim Young pinning Maru to the ground and aiming a deadly blow. With a last-ditch effort, Maru barely turns the weapon aside right before it shoots. He pushes her away with a sudden surge of power to break free. Seeing her opening, she delivers a strong kick straight to his face. While a fierce battle rages on, a phone lying on the floor suddenly starts to ring. His wife calls with a sweet message from the kids on the screen as he stumbles nearby. Chifo is lying on the ground, picks up the phone, and tells his daughter he's just a bit busy at work. His face twists in horror as she innocently tells him that she and her mom already ate eel. He frantically asks what she means while his daughter explains that her mom is also staying at grandma's house. He lets out a terrified scream as the girl asks if he's finally going to get a little brother. The other two survivors shout to him, begging him to run and hide with them. Relieved that everyone is alive, the chief hears one of them ask with jealous eyes if he's going to eat eel again. Hong Jan-ho walks up and tells the chief he can leave early, but the chief pleads to stay and work late. Juno peers through his glasses, keeping a close eye on the fight between Maru and Kim Young. He believes that even though they are very different, this fight looks really exciting. One of the bad guys, crushed beneath the hero's leg, asks if Miss Kim Young will win. Jan-ho laughed and said that Young fights just as well as she eats, boasting skills that match her incredible appetite. The henchmen cheer and scream, urging Kim Young to finish off Manager Ha. Hong Juno grinned darkly and asked if they knew something. He says that while Kim Young was built to be perfect, Maru was already human from the moment he was born. He only taught Maru a few things because he found him interesting, starting with a lesson on how to remove bones. In a memory from the past, he shows how to slice through a dead body with one sharp, perfect cut, insisting that the whole thing must fall in a single, clean blow. Maru copies the move right away and asks if that's how it works. Jono is shocked to learn that Maru mastered the trick in just 1 month. He remembered Maru grumbling about how hard it was, so he decided to throw an even bigger challenge her way since he learned so fast. The challenge was a chained monster so tough that even a top boss would need an hour to finish it. Juno lets the beast loose and tells Maru to give it a shot. He remembers thinking about Maru. The boy didn't even wait 5 minutes to bring the creature down. In that instant, Juno knew he had finally found the perfect butcher he had been searching for. Back in the present, Maru grabs a chance to knock the gun from Kim Yang's hand and watch it fly away. Juno asks Chief O if he knows what a butcher is, and when Chief O explains that it means a man with nothing, Juno praises his wisdom. During the battle, Kim Young steps back to grab a knife hidden on her back. Now that she has her weapons, she knows the battle isn't truly finished until she says it is. Then she brings a flurry of blows down on the boy, but he grips the knife handle tight and holds his ground against her strength. Then he pushes her away and strikes back. Kim Yang's eyes go wide in shock as she stares in disbelief at what she sees. She suddenly notices that he is mimicking her every move. As Juno and Maru trade a flurry of fast punches, Juno warns that beating Kim Young won't be an easy task. But he admits that it's hard to deny Maru is getting better every single minute. Maru slashes the attacker's knife with his own just as the battle wears down to a test of endurance. Both get ready for their next move by planting their feet firmly on the ground. All she can hope for is to beat him to the finish line before he catches her, or he must hold on just a little longer to get ahead of her. John-ho then looks at his men and asks if they are as eager to see the result as he is. He stands up right on top of them. He grinned with sadistic delight and refused to let them watch. The men pleaded for the fight to end, but John-ho just crouched low to the ground instead. Suddenly, he swings his axe and sends a powerful shockwave rolling through the entire hall. He promises to show them something even more amazing, leaving Maru, Kim-young, and his henchmen shaking with fear. He rests the axe on his shoulder and calls out to Maru in a serious tone. Then, with a daring grin and clenched teeth, he challenges him to face him, while Kim-young wonders if the old man is just joking around. She points her knife at him and shouts that he's a traitor because he hurt her pride. He holds up a card and explains that he must rush to a fancy buffet before it closes in just an hour. He tosses a glowing card high into the sky and yells for her to run, while she frantically scrambles on the ground to grab it before it's gone. Janho stared at her, calling her crazy for getting so upset over just a dropped cake. He turns to Maru with a creepy grin, declaring that their moment has finally arrived. Maru jumps high into the air, shouting out where his brother is while throwing his knife. Maru's face suddenly froze in a mix of shock and confusion. Janho swings his axe to block the attack, sending Maru flying backward. Maru can't stop wondering just how strong that man really is. Hong Juno steps up and tells them that from now on, they have to fight with everything they've got. Maru's eyes go wide as he springs into high alert. A white line slices through the air, making Maru feel like he's been torn right in half. He goes still, sensing a sharp cut without being touched, and whispers the name of Chief Hong. Juno tells him that dropping his guard means certain defeat, leaving Maru even more stunned by how powerful he is. Maru starts to remember his life back when he was just 21. Once his father passed away, he had to step up as the head of the family. So he had to raise livestock to survive. The work was hard, but it wasn't actually all that bad. He remembered how Hong Juno taught him the tricks of the trade, treating him like his own son. Maru trusted him, but seeing his mother lying in a hospital bed made him wonder why. He screams with all his might, begging to know why it happened. He lunges at John-ho in a rage, screaming and demanding to know why John did that to him. John-ho blocks the hit without trouble, but Maru won't let him go until he says why. He then swings the axe, reminding him to keep his moves simple. John-ho notes that a larger move means a bigger gap, so Maru believes he has found his chance. With his knife high, he's ready to strike and thinks he's found his moment. But Juno just flicks him across the forehead to show him the difference between a real opening and a fake one. With a mark on his forehead, Maru realizes that trying to hit Chief Hong's weak spots isn't working. Maru ponders his next move if cutting the gaps fails, thinking about tearing him apart piece by piece instead. He also thinks about going in and ending it all right now, just like he did with the glasses-wearing supervisor. But he remembers his battle with Kim-young and knows he has to try something new. Hong Jian-ho walks up with a creepy grin and asks Maru what's on her mind. He tells him not to let his mind wander while the fight is still going on. Jian-ho scolded him for dropping his guard, warning that getting careless could lead to a terrible end. While Maru pulls back, Jian-ho smacks him with his axe handle and scolds him for moving in a straight line. He says this is what happens when your moves are too easy to read, and Maru frantically reaches for the axe. Jian-ho catches him easily and throws him flying across the room. He then strikes Maru down with the axe, wondering if all that training meant anything. Maru screams with rage and lunges forward, ready to strike again. The henchmen stare in awe, whispering that their boss could have ended the fight instantly but is just toying with him. The chief admits they don't get it, convinced Juno is trying to end him in an even crueler way. The other men shout that the boss is a monster and a beast, but Chief tries to explain that he didn't mean that. He finally reveals the truth, showing that Maru is just matching the boss's speed. Chief shouts that Manager Maru is the real monster, but Juno steps in to block the strike and tells him to aim a little lower. Maru grits his teeth in frustration at the size of the gap, charges forward again while shouting for Juno to take it seriously, and Chief watches with awe as they witness the birth of a monster. Juno laughs off the weak hits, telling Maru that if he wants a real fight, he needs to come at him with all he's got. While Maru gets better with every hit, John-ho warns him that he's still missing something key. He then leans on the heavy axe to crush Maru's knife, explaining that the sheer size of his weapon gives him the upper hand in a face-to-face fight. Maru struggles to move under the heavy pressure as Juno mocks him, claiming he hasn't even reached his full strength yet. He drops to his knees, worn out, and Juno teases him for being so weak after barely eating. Maru presses his axe hard against the boy's side and sneers, wondering if the kid really thinks that kind of force can do anything. Maru's knife blade breaks under the pressure. Juno then smashed the ground beside him with his axe, ordering the man to rise, because humans do not crawl like animals. He looks at the broken knife while Juno teases him about crying over a broken sword. Now that we're here, Juno says it's time to fight with our bare hands. Seeing another knife, he lunges to grab it just as his boss asks if fighting without a weapon scares him. Juno realizes Maru truly needs a sword as he grabs a table. Just as Juno hurls the table at him, Maru yells that he won't just stand there and watch. Yen jumps forward, screaming as he gets ready to fight, while Juno just looks irritated by the whole mess. Just as Maru is about to strike, John-ho suddenly bends down to tie his shoelace, leaving Maru stunned and frozen in shock. He then grabs Maru's ankle and scolds him for running with his shoelaces untied. With a swift sweep, he tosses the other guy into the air and yells, "You gotta handle the basics?" Then Juno smacks him upside the head while he's flying, looking really annoyed. As Maru plummets to the ground, John-ho screams out, wondering how he'll ever manage life without his best friend. Maru hits the ground hard. Seeing the young man groaning in pain, Juno says, "That's enough for today," and steps forward to ask if Maru was wondering why he did all of this. He asks if he knows the price tag on the factory in Japan that he burned down. The answer is coming, and that factory is worth a staggering 300 billion. Jan-ho then asks himself if he can really take on the Japanese warriors who are coming after him. In the end, Maru must find a way to make things right that they can both accept, even as he points to his own mother as the living proof of the punishment he deserves. John-ho points to the bodies on the floor and tells Maru, "All this proves you can pay back the money," while holding his sunglasses and speaking his name. With a bright smile, he reaches out and invites him to join in the work. He admits that 300 billion is a huge sum, but Maru can earn even more if he teams up with him. So Jan-ho steps away and tells Marva to get back to work as soon as he feels better. Maru lies on the floor, wondering just why all this happened. He figured that if everything had a reason, Juno would have just told him what was going on. When he heard the question, Juno spun around and declared the answer was obvious. With a crazy grin, he says this path is way more fun. Mara stays flat on the ground, eyes fixed on the ceiling, totally drained and beaten. A tiny smile starts to grow on his face as he lets out a soft laugh. Suddenly, the laugh explodes into a wild, out-of-control roar. Juno spins around with a grin and asks if Maru has to admit it was fun. Maru slowly rises, nodding that it was fun but also completely absurd. He stands before Juno and admits that he saw him as his mentor, his father, and his savior. Maru runs his hands through his hair in disbelief, wondering if all this was just for his entertainment. He blames him for playing games with his family, then quickly stops himself from calling him Chief Hong. Maru then gives him a new name, calling him Hong the Pig. With eyes red from staring too long, he pulls at his hair and shouts that the nightmare is finally starting. Hong Juno tightens his fist in anger and demands to know if Maru just called him a pig. With a glowing red aura wrapping around him, he lifts his axe and dares his enemy to attack with their strongest weapon. Sunshin steps up and asks Shifu what he's doing down there. He answers that he is writing his will and orders his men to do the same right away. Shiva warns that anyone who has truly seen Hong Janho fight is already dead, leaving everyone else with a terrifying conclusion. They are all doomed. As Janho swings his axe and shatters the ground, Maru leaps back just in time to dodge the blast. Maru feels another blow rushing toward him. Janho shouts out to him, telling him how proud he is and asking if he's forgotten everything he was taught. He lunges forward with his axe, shouting that he warned him not to walk straight backward. But then something catches Juno's eye and he freezes. He grips the axe handle tightly. Then Maru springs into the air with his knife drawn just as Juno realizes the straight-line attack was a trap to aim right for his face. Juno wonders if he is trying to hit the very axe that pinned him to the ground before. Juno grins defiantly and admits he likes a challenge, while Margot pushes the knife closer, only for him to point out that she'd have to get much nearer to cut his face. In a quick, sharp motion, he snatches the knife right at its point. Margot manages to slash his chin. He lands another move, hitting with a strong strike right after. The chief's men scream in disbelief that Hong Janho has been hurt. Janho stands his ground for a beat, giving nothing away. Shifu freezes in disbelief, watching Maru twist his arm and shift his grip on the blade faster than the eye can follow. Janho spots him charging toward him and shouts, "Little Maru!" He then leaps forward and lands a kick on Maru, claiming he was just joking before being hit with real malice. Maru keeps standing while Janho sees he means business. He warns that if Maru keeps charging at him, he'll drive the axe straight into his chest, so without hesitation, he stomps hard on Maru's chest and decides he has no choice but to kill him. The force of the blow throws Maru flying backward. Janho walks forward without rushing, looking shocked that Lil Maru could take that hard hit. He then slides the heavy axe back behind his neck. He grins with sadistic joy, flexes his muscles, and asks what you think of that. He mocks him, daring Maru to guess if the axe will strike from the left, the right, or from above, before screaming as he lifts the weapon for the final blow. Maru's eyes go wide as she focuses everything she has. Just as the axe is about to strike, Maru brings up his sledgehammer to block it at the very last moment. Juno steps back, totally confused by what just happened. Maru snaps at Juno, demanding if he knows what it means to slaughter a cow. Then he lunges again and again, screaming that the cow must die. Chief stares at the scene in horror, knowing exactly what Maru's weapon is. He realizes the sledgehammer moves belong to Chief Beaks and the knife strikes match those of Chief Choice. Maru quickly shifts his hold on the knife. Next, he brings out the exact sharp slashes of Miss Kim. Chief stares in shock as he realizes Maru has stolen everyone's moves, making him wonder if Hong Juno can actually lose. Juno has to run away while covered in deep cuts. He clenched his teeth in rage and shouted a curse. Suddenly, he lunges forward and grabs Maru by the throat to demand if Maru truly sees him as a pig. Juno begins pounding him nonstop, screaming that he took care of him and cleaned up every mess he made in Japan. He keeps hitting him, wondering if this is how Maru dares to look at him. With one last punch, he sends him flying and asks if this is how he repays his kindness by turning against him. Jan-ho grabs his axe and warns Maru not to get it twisted, reminding him that he hasn't even used his full power once. Maru's blood hits the floor with a dark splash. Tired but standing tall, Maru gets up as Juno wonders if he really wants to see this all the way to the finish. He lifts the axe and shouts that he cannot let him die. Upside down, Maru decides that since he's likely to die anyway, he might as well take his opponent down with him. He wonders if giving up all his memories for revenge makes him ready to face the end. He shoved all his good feelings for Juno down so hard he wouldn't even hesitate for a second. He even threw away his feelings and treated people like things just to win. Margaret thought he'd tossed everything in the trash, but he suddenly remembers there's still one thing he hasn't thrown away. The only thing left for him was his own life. He stands before Juno, who is getting ready to strike the final blow with his axe. To win, he knows he must throw away his life along with his opponent's. He gets ready to give up on living for anything other than this moment. Then Marvel dashes forward and jumps to land his final blow. Suddenly, Kim Yong pops up, firing shots and shouting to see if you want to die. Furious, she vows to stir up a real hornet's nest. Her eyes go wide with pure shock the moment she sees what's there. The gun slips from her grip and tumbles to the floor. Hong Juno smiles as he turns to ask if the little lady has finally made it. Juno tosses a key onto the floor and points Kim Yong toward his office, letting her know the safe is hiding inside. He shows her that all her contracts are inside, leaving her shocked, then tells her that half of everything there is his retirement fund, orders her to give the other half to Maru, and collapses backward without a sound. Maru leans over the fallen man and whispers his name in a quiet, hushed tone. With eyes burning from rage and tears, he tightens his grip on the knife and screams to strike him down one final time. In a flashback, the boy pleads for his life. Juno tore out his own eyes. Here is the tale of a man who sat right on top of a pile of dead bodies. A man who ruled a pigsty ate with desperate hunger. In this breeding ground known as the pigsty, humans were raised like pigs in a special way. They pushed them to the very limit by keeping them starving. They kept the food away until hunger turned the people into violent beasts. The hunger was so fierce it turned everyone into a wild beast. Then they would hand out one last meal and watch a starving hand plunge deep into the slimy mess. Watch the one lucky pig who survived the nightmare and see how he managed to steal all the food for himself. No matter how far a pig runs, it stays a pig until stronger violence, like endless hunger, breaks its spirit and tames it. A brutal and hideous violence that shaped the man he became. Only a handful of pigs make it through the tough choice, risking their own lives to guard their food. Then those chosen pigs go out on their special missions. He steps up to the mob boss, asks if he's the Sea of Blood of Mapo, leaves the man stunned, and then stabs him instantly, sealing the pig's fate from the start. The bad guys stand there, staring at him in shock and anger. They are trained for battle only to face a brutal and final end. But sometimes the story takes a surprising turn. The creature that was meant to be killed comes back to life. Even when they come back, they are still treated with scorn. The pig never turns back into a human. It just goes right back into its cage. He sits in his cell with his own kind, telling himself over and over that he is nothing but a pig. He was convinced he had to end his life like a pig, but fate had other plans. He got sent to his death so many times, yet he always found his way back to life. As he kept on surviving, a fresh idea started to grow inside him. A question kept bouncing around in his head. He stared at the pile, wondering if he was hunting humans or pigs. And just like every time before, he stepped up to his mark, now dressed in a suit and holding his axe. When he came back one day, a crowd of men greeted him, and the man in glasses pointed to a woman, saying, "That's the pig we've been talking about." When Juno didn't care, the man got so mad he hit him with a tool and screamed that a silly pig had the nerve to ignore him in front of everyone. Juno's eyes burned with rage as he saw the liar who had raised him like a beast. The man bowed to the president, admitting the guy was a master of his craft but lacked any manners. All of a sudden, she gave him a sharp slap and scolded him for cutting their talk short. She looks right at him and says he isn't human at all, but a pig, which leaves him totally silent. In that split second, Juno understood that if he was just like an animal, then he would take the rest of his own destiny into his own claws. He rose to his feet and stepped forward toward the man. While the others shouted to stop him from hitting that person, he lifted his axe and angrily declared that he would be the king of the pigs. The president stares at him, shocked by how bold he is. He didn't even pause before driving the axe straight into the man. The man crashes to the ground, and that was it. Janho snatches the sunglasses off the dead body, slides them on, and tells her that if she's going to use animals, she should pick the very best ones available. She looks at him, her face a mix of deep thought and mystery that no one can read. She gives him a chance with a quiet smile. And so his empire began, built on the blades of butchers. He spent his whole life raising and training pigs. Amid the dull routine, he met Yang and Maru, and as he spent time with them, he began to dream of a day when he could finally live like a human being. But that hope ended abruptly with a harsh command, leaving him screaming into the phone in rage, wondering why he had to get rid of them after he'd already cleared up Maru's mess and made a deal with the Japanese. The president's voice sounded icy and firm as he declared that everything had gone well so far. She warns him that if he doesn't get rid of them, he'll end up being thrown away with them. She threatens to send him back to the pixie, but he squeezes his fist hard, reminding himself that as a pig he must obey orders, even though he desperately wants to save Maru. He figured that taking Maru down to the underworld would finally make the president see things his way. But everything shifted when Maru started to see him as a pig, and simply couldn't stand it anymore. It was not okay for him to see her that way. He confessed that he did consider taking his life out, just as he was told to. But in the end, he just couldn't bring himself to kill him, seeing the sharp difference between a pig living without purpose and a human risking their life to protect what matters most. Seeing Maru like that, he felt sorry for how he had acted. Right then, he wished he could be human again. He just wanted people to see him as a real person. He leans close and whispers to Maru that she needs to look. With a deadly wound in his chest, he asks one last question. Am I truly human? He smiles, tells Mari he must live like a human until the very end. This is the tale of the Pixie King, a man who died while still human. A dark shadow sweeps over Janho. Troy Kijon kneels beside him, admitting in plain words that he wishes he had been the one to kill him. He is the senior managing director of World Security, a tall and serious man. He grabs Juno's eyes and forces them to open. Jun grips his eye tightly and vows to reclaim everything that was stolen from him. He turns away from the cold body and silently wishes him peace. He speaks into the phone to tell President Yu what is happening. He says Janho is dead and the safe he was watching has vanished. Facing a huge army, he calms her down and tells her not to be scared. As a van rolls down a rainy, dark road, Kijong realizes it doesn't matter where Janho's killer runs. He vows to finish his enemy and return the safe. The camera snaps back to Cho Kong, who is talking on the phone with Cheryu. He stares at the screen and checks that the news he got is right. Watching the security cameras, he reports that Juno is dead, and the safe he was supposed to watch has vanished. Hyjin tells her not to worry about where the killer who hurt Juno might go, because it doesn't matter. He smashes the screen with a hard punch and promises he will finish the job. He then finishes up and promises to bring the safe back. Back at the scene, the security camera swivels to watch them. Maru walks up to Juno's still form and shouts his name. With tears of fury streaking his face, he screams for him to get up and fight. Kim Young stares in shock, wondering how he suddenly became so strong when he wasn't even that strong a moment ago. She wonders how he managed to get so strong in such a short time as he walks toward her. Her gut tells her something is wrong, so she grips her hidden weapon harder. Her gut tells her to run far away from this man, no matter what. Feeling the chill of his presence, she gasps sharply and holds her breath. Kim Young throws her hands up and gives in. Maru pushes the knife into her chest and demands to know why she wants to die so soon. Suddenly, Chifo's men rush forward to block her, shouting for everyone to stop the fight. Sun Shin frantically shouts that with director Hong gone, they are all doomed, so there is no point in fighting anymore. Ilbong says that if they hold on to one another, they have a much better chance of making it through. They stand shoulder to shoulder, creating a living wall around her to keep Maru away. Marva glances at him with a serious look and asks where his younger sister is. The men glance at Kim Yong and whisper that she must be the one who took it. She pauses to think and suddenly understands he means Hanaru. She explains that Mr. Hong sent her to feed the girl at a fancy Chinese restaurant. But since the company card was full, she had to run out to get a new one. She remembers the smashed cake and the furious fight she had with her butcher partner, the one responsible for the accident. Then, in the middle of the chaos with Mr. Hong, she forgot all about him. With tears streaming down her face, she admits that she has done wrong. Perched on the edge of the moving van, Kim Yong gets ready to jump and wonders if she should leap from right there. The men decide to part ways to keep the path clear and encourage her to prove her North Korean Special Forces skills. Terrified, she spins to face Maru and admits she can't go through with it. He gives her a cold, commanding look and simply tells her to jump. She jumps out of the van and shouts that she will finish her job no matter what. While the other men offer praise, Maru stays quiet, though she too is impressed. Thinking he must act quickly to rescue his mother and Neru from the approaching world group, he moves out while Detective Hay, feeling sick at Maru's home, surveys the empty crime scene and finds no victims. He spots something odd on his glove and wonders why there are no victims inside, just as an officer outside calls out that everyone has been evacuated because of loud noises coming from the basement. Officer Lee frets over Maru's fate, but Detective Han gives him a hard push to move on. The young officer asks where they are going, and then they walk away from the crime scene. The detective shows us the way to the hospital where Maru's mother is lying in a bed. At the hospital, a nurse tells Maru and Ilbong that a group of men in suits has already taken the patient home. Ilbong screams into his phone to Kim Yong, and Maru, hearing the panic, realizes Neru isn't at the restaurant. Maru clenched his teeth in rage when he saw that the men in suits had taken his sister too. He sprints down the hospital hallway, yelling that they will definitely take his mom and sister as hostages. Ilbong realizes fast that the safest spot in the city center to take them is the World Security Headquarters. The two stop dead in their tracks, stunned by how hard the mission ahead will be. Just then, the elevator doors slid open and a group of suited men stepped out. Walking at the front is the tall director Chu Kidra, who moves with a scary and powerful presence. He gives a smug grin and says he never thought he'd meet him again like this. The person he's talking to is Detective Han, who looks sick but glares at him with serious intensity. Kong mocks him for always switching partners, and the detective fires back by bragging about how he earned his promotion. Han asks why a man like him is in a hospital, and Kong just tells him he's only dropping by to say hello. As he walks by, Ki-jong tells him to be good to the folks around him. The detective watches his target leave, muttering that it was a waste of time and urging him to worry about himself, only to be interrupted by a running man shouting about a huge problem, which sends the detective panicking as he tries to warn that Maru has just returned to the hospital and that he left him alone. Kalong hushes him with a silent nod, proving he already knows what's going on. He bites his lip hard to stop himself from screaming while Ki-jong warns him that the detective is nearby. The man jumps up with a muffled scream, feeling the pain and finally learning that speaking his mind can get you hurt. The detective turns to Ki-jong and tells him to stop worrying about others and instead focus on taking care of his own men. He warns him that his next visit will be to his coffin, but he promises to leave a generous donation. Ki-jong, curious about how Maru moved so fast, begins to wonder if the boy might have helped him. Just then, Margot and Ilbong run into a stranger who says hello. A tall, well-dressed man walked up and told us he'd been waiting for us. He opens the car door and gestures for them to climb inside so they can have a proper conversation. Maru stares him down, not trusting a stranger who just showed up in a suit. Fueled by burning rage, he surges forward and demands to know if he is the one who stole his mother and sister. The man calmly confirms it, making Maru's eyes burst with rage, only for him to suddenly bow and apologize for his rudeness. He points to the car where a woman is sitting. He says the chairwoman will explain everything. Shim Yun-yong, the boss of the Charlotte Hotel, steps forward to introduce herself and say hello to Maru. Sitting smoothly in the car, the woman greets Maru, saying it's an honor to finally meet him, and introduces herself as Shin Yun-yong, the president of the Charlotte Hotel. Maru suddenly snaps and demands to know where his family is. Suddenly, another door swings open and Sun Shin steps out to say everything will be explained. Maru and Ilbong turn around, their eyes wide with shock at what they see. Ilbong asks in surprise why they are coming from there, while Sun Shin just greets him with a polite hello. He says they moved the moment they learned the world group was advancing, and the enemy forces turned to Charlotte for aid. Sun Shin tries to apologize for the shock, but Maru stands his ground and scolds him for grabbing his family without asking. With burning anger in his eyes, He demands to know how they are any different from the rest of the world. Sun Shin urges him to take a close look at the tablet. He reveals that the World Group tracking team has reached the hospital and says that without Charlotte, his family would have already been discovered. Maru looks at the screen, quietly trying to make sense of what he is seeing. His eyes turn to Sun Shin, still unsure about what's happening. Shin Yunyang waves Maru into his car. She gives a quiet smile and promises to take him home to his family. The Charlotte Group works in many big fields, from making medicine and fuel to running hotels and managing money. Meanwhile, the World Group is busy keeping its defenses strong, moving goods around, building things and staying safe. Even though both looked like huge companies, they were secretly fighting a hard war behind the scenes. A lone man ended the long war with his unstoppable strength. Because of this, the Charlotte Group lost and broke apart into two sides, one wanting to give up to the World Group, and the other, like her, wanting to protect what remained, while Maru grew impatient and demanded she get to the point. Ilbong steps in to remind everyone that even though Director Hong is dead, the World Group still holds all the power. Yunyong admits that even though he killed the director, he knows he can't keep his family safe or run away from the group by himself. She tells him that Charlotte's money and big connections are the perfect way to make sure he wins. She gazes at him, ready to make a proposal. Maru glances back at her, clearly puzzled by where the talk is going. Out of nowhere, a van smashes into their car with a terrifying crash. The laundry car driver can't hold on to the steering wheel as the crash knocks it out of his hands. The whole line of trucks and cars suddenly slides out of control on the slick road. Back inside the van, the sudden crash throws the men crashing into one another. The fancy car got flung to the other side of the street. Once they crash, the cars skid to a halt facing opposite directions on the street. Shin Yunyang wakes up with a start, the sharp pain from the crash jolting through her. She realizes Maru shielded her with his own body as the impact hit. After releasing her, he gently checks to see if she is all right. Maru peered out and, when he asked if it was the World Group's men, she shook her head and said no. She reveals that her divided family is pushing her brother, Shimyeongyu, to kill her and take over the group, suspecting he sent the enemy soldiers, so she presses his face and offers a deal. Her group will shield his family from the World Group. As a trade, she asks him to be her sword for a little while. Maru looks at her without saying a word, thinking hard about her offer. He then turns to the car door and says she'll have to prove it to him. Maru challenges her to prove she can protect his family, and after she does, he pledges to become her sword. While elsewhere, Director Choi Kijong steps out of his car. As he gets closer, he starts talking about the crowd walking in front of him. Walking toward the Grand Temple stairs, he sees that everything has been set up just for him. He orders the gates open to reveal a funeral taking place for Hong Jan-ho inside. A long line of men in suits stood there, paying their final respects. A woman hidden in the shadows greets him, and he bows low to show his respect. She is Yudane, the head of the World Group, and she demands to know who was responsible for killing Director Hong. Haijong says one of them ran away, but they caught the other one. The camera jumps to Kim Yong, who fears her friend won't stop bothering her. She had no money for food and hoped her butcher friend would save her if the mission went wrong. Actually, she's sitting in a Chinese restaurant where the staff are too scared to move. She stands surrounded by a sea of men in suits, knowing she has no choice but to fight. Kim Yong, her eyes hidden in shadow, looks at her captors and calls them her sweet South Korean comrades. Then with a mocking smile asks how much cash they have. While on the road, Maru gets out of the car and stands alone against the approaching group of men. Their boss, Joe Byango, promises his crew a promotion before sneering at why a simple guy like Maru is even there. He pulls out a knife and tells his men to clean up the mess. They crowd around Maru, sneering at him and daring to ask if he's Shim Yunyong's lover. One of them steps up to mock him only to get knocked out. Maru dashes forward, swiftly drawing out the other men standing nearby. He wonders if things have always been this easy. With a sharp hit, he puts another one down and finally starts to get what's really happening. He's finally seeing how strong the people he's met have really been. Maru stops to take it all in, realizing just how powerful he is, while the terrified leader Joe grabs a long knife and screams, trying to figure out who this guy really is. He shoots forward in a last-ditch effort, screaming for an answer. He moved fast, but then his hand shattered. Joe Bango, the leader, lets out a scream of pain and shock as he stares at his hand. But then, his other hand gets hit. The leader grabs his hand and shouts an angry curse. Maru looks right at him, getting ready to land the final hit. With a quick flick of his hand, he stops the leader, and then with one sharp cut, he ends the fight. Shin Yunyang crept up behind him. He spins around, declares that he has proved his worth, and now it is her move. Maru steps forward and insists that she must prove she can protect his family. He stares at the smashed car, wondering how they'll reach his mom now and if they'll have to walk. She smiles and shows she's already called for a helicopter, which is now rising into the sky. Yoon tells him that he asked her to show off her true strength. She then invites him along to a person's funeral, and outside the temple, a chant is spoken about the promises that link the sky to this holy place. Inside, a monk keeps praying and asking for forgiveness for the bad things done because of greed, anger, and ignorance. The head monk led his followers to sing a sacred song to the Buddha that washes away the weight of past bad deeds. As the prayer goes on, Chairwoman Yudane solemnly lights an incense stick to honor Hong Jan-ho. Director Chua Ki-jong watches the ceremony until a subordinate rushes over. The man whispers to him that something big is wrong outside. Kong then walks down the temple stairs to see what's there. Outside, he learns that Maram has arrived, while at the Chinese restaurant, Kim Yong digs through the defeated men's bodies and grumbles about how the World Group's messengers always bring trouble. Sitting on a pile of bodies, she counts the tiny coins she found and wonders why they have so little. Just then, she gets a call from Chief O, who asks where she is and tells her about the funeral. Shocked, she repeats the news that Maru is at Manager Hong's funeral. Furious, she screams into the phone, complaining that they went to eat yokajang without her. Back at the temple, Maru and Yoonyoung's assistant face a massive army of men in suits. One of them stares him down and demands to know if that's Maru, the scoundrel who killed Manager Hong. One guy wonders if Maru even knows where he is, while another, seething with anger, demands a toolkit to show to Manager Hong's spirit. Yoonyoung's assistant checks in on Maru, but Maru is so confused he can't even remember what he was just asking about. She asks if he's nervous, but he says no because she already promised to prove herself. He says that if that's true, she'll manage things just fine. A huge man grabs him by the suit and asks if he is the kid who beat Manager H. Kim Min-suk, the vice director of World Trade, demands to know why Maru is wandering around with Charlotte's girl. He moves in and asks if Charlotte supported him from the beginning. He labels him a failure and claims it's all a fake, but a voice cuts him off. Frustrated, he spins around and demands to know who the nerve to bother him was. Suddenly, someone grabs his face and yanks it hard, making him scream in shock. Cho Ki-jong, the director, shoves a man out of the way and yells for everyone to clear off. He apologizes to Maru for making her deal with his troublesome men and admits that killing Manager Hong was no easy task. He then introduces himself as Cho Ki-jong, the leader of world security, and vows to treat him with the respect he deserves. But other men step up to tell Director Choi not to keep all the fun to himself. As the president and vice president of World Investment Securities walk in, one of them wonders if catching Maru will make him stronger than Manager Hell. The World Group bosses fought over who got to fight, with one claiming Maru was his and saying the rest could have what was left. Maru quietly reaches for his weapon, but Shin Yoon steps up and stops his hand. She strides right up to the group and asks if this is all World Livestock can do. One man shouts that their honor is ruined, but Yoon cuts him off to tell him he doesn't get the glory of beating the guy who knocked out Manager Han. She says they want to kill the murdered manager and steal his glory, but she wonders if it's right for everyone to gang up on one man and if that honor is even worth it. She tells them that Maru stood toe-to-toe with Manager Hong and came out victorious with honor. She mocks them, daring them to team up against him like they couldn't when Manager Hong was around, which makes them furious. Kim Mio's face darkens with rage as he shouts that no one will ever touch his people again. Yong then delivers her final warning. If they kill Maru right here, they better get ready for war. She declares that no honor, glory, or profit will be found, and dares anyone brave enough to face those losses to step forward. She sneers at them, calling them all just talk. The executives fell quiet, scared by her warning. Maru stared at her, wide-eyed and awestruck by the sheer power she just showed. A slow clap echoes as Chairwoman Yudane steps forward to speak to Shin Yoon. She notes that Yoon has her father's gift with words. She then turns to Maru, locks eyes with him, and realizes he is the man who killed Manager Hong. She looks at him with a curious sparkle in her eyes and a tiny, knowing smile. Her grin grows wider, showing the sharp, hungry look of a predator. Yudane turns to go with her men, vowing that they will meet again. As Maru turns and walks away, she glances back and asks who that woman was. Yoon's assistant introduces herself as Yudane, the head of the World Group, and warns him that she is someone he must be extra careful around. After slipping off her high heels, the assistant and the other walked barefoot through the temple. They finally pull up and halt right in front of Hong Jan-ho's funeral altar. Even after he died, his picture still shows a big, stubborn grin. Maru looks at Hong Jan-ho's picture and says he isn't there to say goodbye to his life. He remembers his mother's pain and admits there's no forgiveness for what he did to his family. Carrying the image of his own rage, he admits he wanted to defeat him personally, but he wonders why John Ho let himself die when he had the chance. He remembers the final words his old mentor spoke. In the end, I'm just a person too, Arai. Then he wonders if that final advice really meant for him to live as a human until the very end. He bowed deeply in respect, asking why he died for him and why those words were spoken. Maru admits he doesn't know the answer right now, but he's sure that if he can last until tomorrow, he'll find exactly what he's looking for. He tells Juno not to worry. He rises with a fresh fire in his heart, promising that whatever he has learned will be his key to beating them all and surviving. Outside the temple, Shin Yun-yong shouts his name to get his attention. With the wind tousling her hair, she promises that from the moment he steps through that door, he will become her sword. Mari gives a tiny, quiet smile, letting the idea settle. He and Yun-yong's assistant walk away from the temple as the sun rises, while director Cho Ki-jong watches from the courtyard as the helicopter's blades spin up and the aircraft takes off. He smokes a cigarette, whispers Maru's name, tosses the ash aside, and adds Shin Yun-yong to his list. As the cigarette drops, he runs his hand through his hair. He grinned and said that things were about to get interesting. The grand front of the Hotel Charlotte stands tall in Sioux. A week later, Shin Yun-yong walks through the lobby where the staff bow in reverence, only for a subordinate to rush over and warn him of a big problem with those people. He says they're trying to break into the safe one more time. Yimong's side remembers they work with Maru. She tells them to keep the mess quiet, but another worker jumps in to say the woman is stealing the guests' food. Even with all the chaos, their presence has turned the hotel back to a quiet, normal place. Two men bowed respectfully as the president walked toward the VIP room door. She and her assistant walk into the room to find Maru sitting beside a hospital bed with his sister Henaru. Shin Yun-yong smiles warmly and welcomes Haru. The young woman pulls her aside and asks if something is wrong, since her brother won't tell her anything. Manyang swiftly turns her face to look at Maru. From the other side of the room, Maru confirms he will never say a word to her. Maru tells his mom to rest, but she feels uneasy because Shin Yun-yong is right there. Yun-yong steps up to Hinaru, offers her comfort, and pledges to give his all to help her. Their mother thanked her and begged her to look after her son. Yun-yong takes her hand and reassures her not to worry, since Maram has been such a wonderful help. Just then, the assistant rushed in shouting that something terrible had happened. She sighs and asks who caused the trouble this time, but her face changes completely the moment she hears the answer. The man tells Vice President Shim Yong-yu that her brother has just reached the hotel. While outside a police station, Detective Hanti-sik shows a board confirming that Manager Hong is dead. He remembers that Hong was the main one giving away the ribs. The search also showed a burnt-out Japanese base and a witness who had vanished. The World Organization is now hunting for a man. The detective gazes at Maru's photo right in the center, wondering just how he fits into all of this. Just then, another detective bursts into the room shouting that he knows something new. The young detective holds up his phone to show a picture, proving they found the woman with Maru. Hae-sik gasps in shock when he realizes the man is Shim Yun-yong, the Hotel Charlotte's boss. Back in the hotel room, Yun-yong stands there, furious at her brother's actions. He spins around with a woman on his lap and spots his sister right there. They sit at a table with other women, watching Yunu and shouting for the president to bring him a drink. Maru leans in with a chill in his voice and asks if he should put an end to this. She grabs a bottle of wine and, with a warm smile, decides to serve the vice president a drink herself. The red wine starts flowing out from the bottle's neck. She dumps the whole thing over her brother's head and asks with a sneer if it tastes good. Yun-yong keeps pouring the drink while smiling. She says she looked the other way when he joined the World Organization. Now she steps up to him, calling out because he's openly hanging out with their dogs. While Choi Ki-jong, the executive director, sits on a nearby sofa and takes a sip of his drink, he calls her rude. Yun-yong sets the bottle down on the table and says she gets his bitterness because their dad planned to pass the group to her. She stands up to him for trying to steal their father's job and letting enemies in while their dad is still alive. She sneered at him, asking if he's lost his sense of right and wrong. She then says this is exactly why her father named her his successor. Her brother Sherman Yu whispers her name, his face wet with spilled wine. Suddenly, he licks his lips and declares the wine delicious, but a terrible waste to drink all by himself. He spins around and hands the drink to one of the ladies sitting next to him. Then he grabs her and tries to make her drink from the bottle. Yun-yong stared blankly as her brother screamed for blind obedience, and then threw a bottle that smashed right into the wall. He steps up to her and blames her for already acting like the president just because her father got the job. He smirks as he tells her their dad is stuck in a vegetative state and she won't get anything until he's gone. Yun-yong gives a small smile and tells him to fight however he wants, but to always stay safe. She glares at him and warns that whatever he plans, she can do the same to him right back. Shermong Yu points a finger at his sister, mocking her laughter. From the couch, director Choi Ki-jong throws out a huge, fake laugh. He makes a bitter joke about how strange it is to watch the brothers finally get along. Yoon-young smiles and gently tells President Udane's dog to stay out of this, since it belongs to the Charlotte Group. Cho Ki-jong, the man named Anger, snaps the glass in his hand into tiny pieces. He frowned and corrected her, stressing that he was her husband, President Udane. He walked up and told us the young president didn't seem to know any manners. Just as he lifts his hand, a sharp blade instantly springs into its way. Maru catches the attack to shield Yoon-young, then spins to Cho Ki-jong and orders him to get out. He glares with pure anger and promises to kill him. Maru held the knife to the director's neck as the two faced each other. Cho Ki-jong stares at his bloody hand, shocked that he was stopped and hurt in the middle of it all. He watches with eyes wide with curiosity. As Maru stares him down, Cho Ki-jong realizes he is far more fascinating than he ever expected. Cho Ki-jong steps forward and takes up the challenge. With a grin, he decides it's worth the effort to break him. He licks the cut on his hand, and finds Maru is quite an interesting guy. With a grin, he decides to have a blast. Then he lunges forward, shouting that it will be even easier to crush him now. Maru slashes the attack with his knife, but the blade gets stuck in his own arms. He stares at his own wounds, confused about how he got hurt. Ki-jong goads him into showing off the tricks he learned from Juno. Maru stares in shock as he realizes the director sliced him with just bare hands. He recalls the terrifying power Hong Juno once showed. He knows the greatest power is strong, yet it still doesn't match his master's. With a fast spin, he shifts the knife in his grip. He stands ready to face his opponent with the belief that he will win, while hotel staff outside rush to clear the area and apologize for the trouble they are causing. Shim Yuning watches from the shadows, knowing that Choi stands as one of the world group's most powerful figures. She watches the fast fight, wondering if Maru can actually win this time. As they clash, Choi Ki-jong dodges a blow and asks what that was, wondering if he learned Choi Doyle's techniques too. He strikes out again, muttering that this won't satisfy him, but Maru sidesteps and snatches a whiskey bottle from the table. He spins and strikes with the bottle, making Choi wonder if he has secretly learned Baekhyun's moves. Cho Ki-jong shouts and slams his hand up to block the blow. He grabs the tool to push back, admitting that Maru is way more interesting than he first thought. Maru quickly shifts his hold on the knife, adjusting to the moment. He slashes with a flurry of quick strikes and asks Choi if he knows Kim Yang's secret moves. Choi uses his elbow to block the blade, remarking that Hong Juro must have cared deeply to teach him so many skills. He calls their skills nothing more than tricks and then unleashes a flurry of punches straight into Maru's chest. The blast knocks Maru backward and leaves him stumbling. Cho Kong flicks a match to light his cigarette, shaking his head at the ridiculousness of everything going on. He takes a long drag, wondering how someone with such amazing skills managed to beat Chuno. Thinking fast, Maru jumps onto the table to get some space. He leaps from above, convinced he can win even against a foe stronger than Director Hong. Tro looks up with a disappointed face just as Maru understands that he needs a little room to carry out his real plan. From the air, Tro Xiong lunges to grab him, sneering that this attack is all he has. He hits him in the side to show how disappointed he is. Maru dropped to his knees, hacking up air from the hit. Troy holds a cigarette between his lips and says he didn't beat Jono, but that Jono let him win. He thinks Jono must be losing his mind to lose to someone like him. So Maru, furious, screams and rushes forward with his knife high in the air. Sage raises his hand and says he will show him what Jono couldn't. He effortlessly halts Maru's strike, seizing the boy's wrist in an instant. His hand squeezes Maru's chest hard. With one swift throw, he sends him flying through the air and shouts that this asterisk, is truly a skill. Maru spits as he crashes to the ground. Troy walks forward, a bit shocked that he managed to take the hit. He wondered if it was this very spirit that had made Jono like him so well. Struggling to lift himself, Maru manages to speak up and say he has heard plenty about that guy as well. He mocks him, calling him one-eyed and pathetic while reminding him of the good life he used to have. Cho Ki-jong's face turns into a mask of pure anger. He launches a brutal attack, slamming his foot hard into Maru's chest while letting out a furious scream. The hit knocks Maru backward and makes her spit out blood from the shock. Choi, furious and screaming, hits him again and demands to know what he knows about him. He roars that he was the one who should have taken down Chuno. As he slams Maru to the ground, he shouts that she didn't deserve it. Maru looks around and sees that his enemy is far stronger, faster, and more skilled than he could ever hope to be. A picture of his mom and sister in the hospital room suddenly pops into his head. He feels hopeless, wondering how he can keep them safe when someone like Choi is out there. Choi glares at him, demanding to know what he should do. He readies himself for the final strike, screaming that Maru must vanish if he can't grow strong enough. Over by the other side of the room, Shim Yongyu is shouting and cheering Choi on. He keeps talking and promises them the company's shares, but then he suddenly stops speaking. Suddenly, a dark shadow stepped out from behind Yongyu and stopped Choi's strike. Choi stood before the shadowy stranger and remarked that he'd been spotting him popping up all over lately. Detective Hayes Sick held a cigarette in his mouth, told the man not to worry, and kept him going. He points a gun at Choi Ki-jong and says he will go through with his plan. He points the revolver right at us and says if Choi takes someone out in front of the cops, he'll take him out too. Choi lifts his hands in surrender as more officers arrive, mocking them by claiming he was just giving his junior a quick lesson. As he is led away, Shim Yunu screams at the guards who suddenly decide to let him go because he isn't the one they are looking for today. Detective Han looks at Choi and remarks that he seems older. He then says a kid managed to hit him, and Choi looks down at his chest with a confused expression. He spots a handprint on his shirt and starts to get it. He still remembers the exact moment he threw a punch at Maru. Then he saw that Maru had used his own special move right after watching him do it. Cho stares in shock, realizing Maru has copied every single skill, and suddenly thinks the guy is incredibly interesting. He glanced back, wondering if that was the reason Jono liked him so much. The police officer slaps handcuffs on Maru and starts hitting him while shouting about his rights. As two officers drag him away while the detective announces his arrest, Maru stares with intense eyes at the charges of suspicion before Shimuang rushes to call his name just as the police hold him down. She vows to get him out of there quickly and tells him not to worry. Maru gives a quick thanks, then asks her to look after his mom and him. From afar, Choi Ki-jong says Maru is still worried about his family and has a long road ahead before he can be like Jono. With a grin, he starts to think that maybe destroying the Charlotte crew and his family would be the best move. Maru then turns to the man and confirms his name is Cho Ki-jong, swearing that even if he has to die, he will take them all down with his own hands. Choi just says he can't wait for the man to be taken away by the guards, who then lead him off. Suddenly, Shifo and his men arrive to ask Director Shim what's going on now that Maru has been arrested, while elsewhere, Yuden orders Kim Yong to go save Maru right away. Shim Yun-yong points out that the police only arrested Maru and let Director Shim Yong-yu off the hook, proving there are powerful insiders within the force, while Yudane argues they shouldn't save that butcher who cost her job and got her hunted down, even as the chief's men insist they must help him since they've suffered together. She argues that if he were in heaven, everyone would be fine, but they shout back that they need to save him even more because of that. They show that Maru is the reason she can eat whatever she wants at Charlotte, leaving Yudane speechless. Kim Yong gently touches Shim Yun-yong's shoulder as he asks if what he just heard is actually true. Yudane wonders if she can only eat because of her butcher friend, and Shim Yun-yong confirms it. She then explains that she treated her kindly because she was one of Maru's own people. Yudane jumps, shocked to realize she had no clue about this. One man asks where she is going, but Yudane shoves him aside and tells him to shut up. She turns around and says she's going to get Hamaru back. The camera quickly shifts to show the police station as evening falls. Maru sat across from Detective Han in the interrogation room. Maru thinks that even if Shimuan manages to get him out, Choi won't just stand there and watch. The detective remarks that he's changed a great deal since we first met. Han then asks him about his involvement in the Ribs case and another police investigation, explaining that they found blood from World Livestock Workers at his home and that his boss, Director Hong, was killed. The detective leans in and demands to know how he's connected to World. He stubs out his cigarette and asks Maru to speak, claiming he wants to help. But then he says how can he possibly help a man whose face tells a story of dozens of terrible deeds. Just then, Superintendent Anu burst into the room. Her tray clutched tightly as she grumbled that Detective Han hadn't fed the suspect, and insists on eating to stay alive, while Han just tells her to leave the food and go. He whispers that the mayor is angry because they arrested Maru for having a weapon, even though there is no real proof, and asks the detective to let the suspect eat while he watches him closely, and Maru takes a bite of the food. Han walks out the door, telling the superintendent to keep an eye on Maru until he returns. The moment the door shuts, and remarks that the detective is acting very tense. He looks at Maru, tells him to chill out, and explains that his boss got him inside. He offers some food that he says tastes like it came from a fancy restaurant, and he even offers to feed him. In the meeting room, Yudane stands before her team and calls the whole situation ridiculous. She yells at one man for getting arrested after a fight instead of bringing someone back, then scolds the vice president for flirting with female staff and hurting the company. The chairwoman of the World Group then asks if she should personally lead them down. She explained that the chaos at the Charlotte Hotel had turned the media against Chairwoman Shin, leaving her unable to move freely. Yuden tells Vice President Shim to take charge of the board, and Shim agrees without hesitation. She also tells Director Choi Ki-jong to stay out of it, warning him that if his feelings get the better of him, he'll make mistakes. Yudane glares at him and asks if he's unhappy. Back in the interrogation room, and grabs Maru and suggests they have some fun. Maru discovers that the superintendent is actually part of the World Group too, and says he's fast, but then he wonders what Maru could possibly do with that information. 3 men walk down a hallway that the detective had cleared out and where all the cameras were turned off. Their boss says that for the next 30 minutes, nobody outside will have any clue what's going on inside. He swings the door open, praising how a true power uses it and asking why Director Choi found it so tough. As soon as he steps inside, the man grimaces at the stench of blood and complains that it's so dark he can't see a thing. He spots a person sitting down and asks if they are Maru, wondering where Detective and has gone. The man seizes the person's shoulder and shakes them to wake up. He says the chairwoman is waiting, but the person throws their head back. They find Detective and slumped in her chair. The group's leader glances to the side, stunned by what he sees. One of the men feels An's body and says he just killed a detective inside the station because the body is still warm. The leader flicks on a cigarette, figures the man couldn't be far, and shouts for his men to search for him right away. He then shouts to his army of men, urging them to find him before the other flying group shows up. In the middle of a crowded street, he gives the order to cut him loose. Mario strolls through the crowd while that voice keeps telling him it's okay to cut him in two. They had just one rule: bring him back with his breath still in him. Kim slips into her police uniform, shaking in doubt about whether she truly has to do this. She slipped on her cap and muttered that without Charlotte's buffet, she'd be so indifferent she wouldn't mind if he died. As she walked down the hall, she muttered that he was annoying and wondered if she was his mother, since she had to do everything for him. She decides to knock him out and make it look like an accident. She stands before the final interrogation room and declares that the time for judgment has come. Kim Yong then stretches out her baton and jumps to strike, delivering a hit of unrelenting justice. She tells him to lean in and show his head, only to find Maru holding a lunchbox lid instead. He grabs Kiju by the collar and demands to know how she ended up there. She yells at him for being a crazy fool to take out a detective right inside the South Korean police station. Maru tells the detective that he's just a pawn for the World Group and that his crew is already coming to get him. He chose to frame them for it because he couldn't forgive the mistake, and he's glad she showed up just in time. He then asks her to trick the police into thinking the World Group did it, telling her it wouldn't be hard for someone as clever as her. Kim Yong grabs him, yelling that she rushed over to help with Charlotte's buffet, only to find him expecting her to clean up his mess. Kim Yong screams that she won't back down even if it takes her life, but she shuts up the moment she hears Han Woo's name. Marui dismisses the worry as nothing compared to the thrill of crossing the border, then promises to treat her to an all-you-can-eat unlimited 2+ Henu feast. She begins drooling, wondering if he thinks he can buy her off with money, while Maru adds free lifetime meals at Charlotte's buffet to the mix. Kim Yong quickly shakes his hand, seals the deal, and tells him to leave everything to her. From the doorway, she gives a thumbs up and says she'll accept these kinds of deals from now on, while Maru tells her to clean up and call him. He then says he's heading to Charlotte's. Meanwhile, the group's leader believes Maru hasn't gone far and that the